All right, everybody. Welcome back to Art with Errol's podcast. This is our Monday check-in. Let's go. All right, y'all. Another week, another podcast, and here I am. For those that are new to the channel, I'm Errol. I'm your host. I've been in the Navy for 20 years. I'm a gamer. I'm an '80s baby. A family man, an artist, a graphics designer, and streamer, content creator. I do a lot of stuff. I guess. Retired from the Navy, so And this week I thought, with our check-in, we will talk about the power of doing this, kind of weekly podcast check-in. I need a sip of coffee, man. It's early. It's early. We're waking up. We're getting moving. All right, y'all. So let's just dive into what we did last week, because I always do my little weekly recap. Kind of, looking at what we did and maybe what we can do better. We only got like 2 game streams in last week. We got our podcast done, and we got an art video. The art video I really had a lot of fun with. It was just a nice little sketch in a sketchbook. The Phase Talker from Five Nights at Freddy 2. And, it was received okay. I wish, it would have gotten more views. The views were kind of low, I think. But it's all right. My channel is a smaller channel than everybody else's. So, it was cool. But we did get a request. That's what I like, when people actually engage with the content. They actually comment and say something. And we're going to oblige this. The person wants, for next week's video, to sketch Kyle from the Wear Cleaner. It's a video game with the Wear Cleaner, and we're gonna draw it. We're going to do our own little sketch in our sketchbook for Kyle, the Wear Cleaner, and that's gonna be this Friday. So, I appreciate people's support, and when they comment and they request things, I try my best, as long as it's not something that's not tasteful. And, I'm not going to draw something that's not tasteful. If it's, out of pocket, we're not doing that, But, if you got a request and you want me to do it, I will draw something or sketch something or whatever. You just, got to participate, man. Participation is a big thing. So we got a request, and, I didn't even heard of the Wear Cleaner. So I had to look it up on Steam. And now we know what the Wear Cleaner looks like. So we're going to do our sketch of the Wear Cleaner on this Friday. So that was great, and I really enjoy when people participate in the content, y'all. So just sketching, y'all. We're not really doing full-fledged, beautiful pieces. We're just, hey, we sit down, throw open a sketchbook, grab a pencil and some pencil colors, and just sketch something out, That's what we're doing. So next year, we're going to work on some full pieces. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So, we did that. We had a good week. Had a lot of stuff going on, as always. And this week is no different. That's why the podcast is getting done earlier, because we're running out of time today. I got a lot of appointments and stuff going on. So I wanted to just get up early, knock out the podcast, and then we'll move on through the day, and tomorrow we'll get a game stream in. So the importance, y'all. Let's dive back into the topic. So we go off topic a little bit. That's all right. That's how I kind of start off. I like to do the weekly recap. So Monday check-in, right? Why do I feel that it's important for me? A lot of this stuff that I've said this before many times, it kind of helps me reset and refocus and recharge and think about next week. It helps me to you know figure out where I need to improve and try to work on that. So, the Monday check-in is really for me to, kind of think about what we've done and think about our way forward. That's why I like try to think of topics or things that are, not just, they're more interesting to me in my mind that I need to work on. And hopefully it's helping folks that, need to work on something too. You can think about your own content, the stuff you're making throughout the week. That's why I like to do this little Monday check-in. And I think that's the main thing. But, it's also another form of content doing podcasting, right? You're talking to an audience. They don't necessarily see you. Unless you're on Twitch or you're going to watch this on Spotify, you're going to be able to see the video version. You'll be able to see me. Hello, hey, how you doing? All that, but really it's more about the audio, right? I think, when it comes to podcasting, because people usually turn stuff on, they don't really care, to see anything. They're just listening to something as they walk or do their exercise or, cleaning the house or whatever it is they're doing it. They have time to listen to a podcast. And I think it's important to kind of reflect. So our Monday check-in is more of a reflection and, a thinking forward, kind of podcast. And that's what I want to kind of be more of. Where can I better myself in this journey of trying to be a content creator, right? That's my thought process behind it. Sorry, y'all, for those listening. I just needed a sip of coffee. I got my coffee here. I'm trying to get charged up for the day. So, yeah, talking about, the stuff that we've done and then, thinking about what we can do better is really the foundation of this podcast, I guess you would call it, or the crux. How you say it? Crux. If I say, I'm saying that wrong. Yeah, it's about taking a breath, taking a moment. I got like little bullet points I write out, to kind of, guide me, because I can quickly go off topic. Give yourself permission to like pause and think about like your goals and think about the content you worked on, and it's helping me build good habits. I think that's another thing that I have always struggled with, which I've talked about plenty of times, is like staying consistent, which I think is the most important thing, because if you can at least stay consistent with what you're doing, you can improve over time, if you're consistent with doing something and trying it, and then, willing to work towards getting better, yeah, having, the intention to work on things, why? So that's basically why we started this Monday podcast. It was basically more of reflection, more of, taking time to look at what we've done and try to push forward. And I know I'm kind of repeating myself on that, but that's really why we created the Monday check-in. That's why I wanted to have this podcast, because, I want to kind of reflect or have time to reflect on what I've done, and I think this is a great way to do it. And maybe it's helping people, maybe it's not, the goal is always to be helpful in some kind of way, to folks that might be like, oh, I want to do a podcast, or I want to do content creation. They can see what I'm thinking and my way of thinking of going forward. So sharing my process, basically. I think that sums that up. Sharing my process, right? Which everyone's process is different of doing stuff. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. It may not be your cup of tea, or your cup of coffee, because I like coffee. So, if we was to say this was like into pillars, it would be the three pillars, right? Reflection, alignment, and adjustment, right? So what did we accomplish? We went over what we accomplished. We got 2 game streams in. I always try to get 3 game streams in, but sometimes it just doesn't happen, and that's fine. And that's just because of family obligations and other things going on. So, 2 game streams per week, which is fine, and an art video and a podcast. That's where we're at our level of content. I don't get a lot of time, so I have to maximize the time I do have. And that's one thing that I've learned that's, can always be a struggle when you're limited on time. If you're working a full-time job like I do, and then, you also have family obligations and things to do, your time is very limited to content creation. And that's where we're at in our journey. We are at a level where, we only get 2 to 3 hours, and we got to maximize that 2 to 3 hours. And that's the only way we're going to be successful, is to try and maximize every bit of time, every little bit of time that we have. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we face here on our channel, right? It's time constricted, right? We're restricted or whatever. So, in the reflection, we can also always look at what we learned, and what's the next way to put our best foot forward. So, are my actions matching my goal? So when we look at our alignment, are we aligning ourselves to our goals? I think I am, and that's why, I think it's important to kind of review your stuff you've been doing. I really look at it, during the editing process. You look at your stuff, you create something in video format. You have to edit it. If you're not editing your stuff, that could be why you're not seeing certain things or certain errors. So, I think that's important. Is the part of the reflection is also reviewing exactly what you made too, looking at it, Let's see. So let's talk about maybe adjustments. So, you got to make your adjustments by tweaking what you're doing, right? And each week I try to make small tweaks here and there. Some things I think are working, some things aren't. But, you got to look at it through the lens of hey, people like this, because if you can have, this is one thing I've noticed too. I can have a lot of people look at something, but they all may not watch the whole thing, or they may not all engage. So maybe I'm missing the mark, which in a lot of my videos I do miss the mark. So finding that is all about tweaking what I'm doing, and then I have to keep working on that. Tweaking it to making it better and maybe more engaging, or more interesting to the viewer. Definitely need the coffee this morning. Okay, so how's this gonna help us be successful? It's giving us another avenue, I think. So doing a podcast is gonna help us be successful by doing something different. Stepping outside the box. Helping me to speak, because I got to practice my speech, right? I got to intentionally work on being a better speaker for the podcast. And that's tough for me because of the way I talk, that's really a big challenge for me. And it also prevents burnout, because this is a lot easier, I think, podcasts, when you're just kind of ranting and going on about stuff. These are a little bit more relaxed, I think, or more, not lax, maybe that's the wrong term, a little bit more chill, because I'm not really focused on the chat as much or looking for a chat or anything like that. I don't really care if anybody's chatting, because I'm it's not meant, the podcast is not meant for that. It's me talking about what's going on and what I think I'm gonna go forward with. Now, reading the comments later and seeing what people's thoughts are is, something I don't mind doing. But while I'm doing the podcast, I'm not really trying to focus on someone else's thoughts right now. I'm just trying to get my own thoughts out so I can figure out the way forward. So, and this, I think, helps me from going into the wrong direction, and what I mean by that is, like, the wrong direction for me would be to not try to make changes, or not try to improve, not catch my mistakes, so I think that would be the wrong direction. And I think by doing this reflection, it helps me to really think about what I'm making, think about what I'm creating, and hopefully I can build momentum through the consistent improvements. Hopefully we can build some momentum. So, some examples, I guess, we kind of talked about a lot of my examples, I guess. Balancing the game streaming is challenging. Game streaming, art, and podcasting. Like, we got to find the right balance. I don't think I've found it completely. I think I've got like a schedule, but I don't know if I found the right balance. I have a schedule, right? We have a Monday podcast, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday game stream, which is now kind of morphed into a Wednesday, Thursday kind of game stream, and a Friday art video. So, I don't think I found the right balance. Which next year I want to try, maybe we game stream for a shorter time. So it's like, you do like maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours of game stream, and maybe 30 minutes of art every day throughout the week until Friday, and have a completed art video or something along that lines. I don't know. I'm trying to figure that portion out. But I think that's going to be the next direction. Is getting more art videos in throughout the week. So I'm going to try to find balance, and I have like an idea of how I want to do it. I'm not really certain on it though. Another example would be, we built, we're rebuilding our gaming channel from scratch, which we hit 200 subscribers, which was wonderful. I did a little video thanking everybody for the folks who subscribe to the channel, and participate in the chat, comments, and, likes and all that stuff. Much appreciated. I think, rebuilding from scratch, because I wanted to separate things. I thought it was important to separate things. I noticed that, like, a lot of YouTubers and content creators have multiple channels, man. And I was thinking that, if they're doing it, there's got to be a reason behind it. It must be like you get more visibility, but I think the visibility comes with your posting to all those channels, and I'm not really to that level yet. So I think with next year, if we can do a little art each day and a little gaming each day, then you have, I have a little bit more balance amongst the channels. Getting more content on each channel may elevate the visibility. I'm not sure, but we're gonna try it. We're gonna try it, and I think that's the thing. Is you got to experiment. You got to mess around with things. So, and we're talking about some examples, of our journey, and I think that's an example. rebuilding our gaming channel by separating it from our art channel from scratch. Also, we making progress, even though we have rough weeks. We miss some stuff, internet issues, energy or not energy dips. I guess it's energy dips, frame drops and stuff. I figured that out. We fixed that for the most part. I haven't really been experiencing the frame drops since I figured that out. I have a lot of technical issues. A lot of technical issues, especially when I'm streaming or I'm trying to get something to work. Sometimes stuff just doesn't go right. I don't know why. And I don't know how setup gets messed up. Like I get an update for something and then like everything's all jacked up for the computer. So yeah, ultimately our Monday check-in is a giant reflection and thinking forward, and that's where this all stems from, man. And I like the fact that the podcast, even though it's not really growing, and it's fine. I think things may grow in time as I get better at it. I think maybe I'm just not hitting the right keys on, how I speak. Some people may not want to listen to the way I talk, so that could also be a thing. But it's all good. Don't forget to check in on the Monday podcast. We're gonna try to get better. Like I said, I'm always looking for ways to improve things. I am proud of last week. I am, y'all. Even though I didn't get 3 game streams, and I'm still happy with what we accomplished. That's the one thing is I'm always happy that I'm able to accomplish a certain amount of stuff. What's slowing down right now is really the fact that it's holiday time. So gaming news is a little bit less. There's a lot of great games out to play right now. There really is. I just don't have time to play them, and I would love to play a lot of these games. Like I was gonna try Where Winds Meet, but the thing with that is you need to invest a lot of time into some of these games, and I just don't have the time to play. I'll get lost because if I have to cancel a stream, then that's only get if I'm doing 3 times a week. Let's just say I get 3 game streams in a week, right? That's 2 to 3 hours each one, right? So let's just say we maxing out. Let's say we're getting all 3 and 3, right? That's only 9 hours, right? What we had 9 hours. That's 12 hours of game streaming time or something like that. We're not really getting. We're not getting some folks are able to stream 8 hours a day, and that is wonderful. Good for them. Very happy for the success of those folks. That's just not the case with me. I'm lucky to get 3 hours twice a week. So that's total of 6 hours. Maybe 9 or a little bit more than that. If the stars align, if the stars align, and I think for people that want to do content creation, I don't think they understand how. I think the difficulty really comes in balancing your work-life balance with your hobby here. That's a challenge, man. It's a challenge because if you work an 8-hour shift, you're tired already. Most of the time I'm tired, yo. I worked an 8-hour shift. I come home, I try to take a few minutes to get myself together, and then I try to launch the stream, so I can squeeze out the maximum time I can. When I get off work, I get home, I try to straighten up, clean up, get the stream up and going, and then just get my little 2 hours in. It's a challenge. It is. People be like, "Oh, it's not that difficult." Okay, but and then you go on to the next thing. So after them 2 hours, I go pick up the kids, do after school activities, come home, have dinner, got to get rest for work tomorrow. You see, it's a lot, yo. It's a lot. It's a lot. It really is. It is. Balance is it's a balancing act. It is. But I am proud of what I've been accomplishing. Even though we got small, slow growth, but it's growth, and growth is great. You're making progress. So what's one thing I'm gonna commit to this week? I'm gonna commit to doing the drawing that the guy requested, or girl. I don't know who they are. I just have some. I can actually pull up the title. They're give them a credit. I don't know how to say their name because it's a weird tag for YouTube or whatever. Let's see. Let's look at it. Can I go back to the comments here? Comments. Let's see. Okay. It's DEIANGG 5928. So thank you for actually making a request, and we're going to oblige your request to draw Kyle, the wear cleaner. The wear cleaner, yo. So that's what I'm committing to this week. If you make your request, and it's of good taste, I will put it in there, yo. Closing thoughts. Where we at on today's pod? We almost got 30 minutes, man. Look at that, baby. 30 minutes. We almost got 30 minutes. We're sitting at 27 minutes of podcasting. That's a good for me. Good on me. If we're in between 25 and 40, I think we're hitting where we usually land. Yeah. My final thoughts are consistency, I think, beats, intensity, maybe. This is my thoughts on that, the weekly check-in, will build long-term wins, I think. I think this is one of the thoughts that I've been having, is that it's going to help me be more successful, because I could easily turn Monday into just another game stream. But why not have something different? Why not have a different flavor to the pot? I don't know. Throw a little spice on that thing. I don't know. I just want to thank folks for joining and listening to me rant, and talk about where I've been and where I'm going, because that's pretty much what this is. The Monday check-in is where I've been and where I'm going, and what the challenges we're going to try to overcome. It's always been a struggle with the speech, so I think I'm going to struggle there. Unless I could probably take a speech class. I have taken a speech class, I thought, but is what it is. I talk how I talk. But other than that, y'all, I appreciate everyone, yo. Appreciate everyone for the love and support. If you're watching the podcast, if you're liking the Monday check-in, it always helps if you actually like the video on YouTube or something, or leave your boy a comment or something. If you're listening to it on Spotify, you leave a comment, I will do my best to pay attention to it. When people do leave something and they want, an art request, I am going to do my best to make that happen. And I do appreciate the love on the gaming channel, y'all. The fact that we have hit 200 subscribers, in 1 year, basically at the start of the year, where were we at? We was doing okay. I mean, but I think, you know, we've grown a lot because, the channel is still fairly new from when I started it. When I changed this channel into a gaming channel. How do I pull it? I always struggle trying to find the analytics for it. Oh, here it is. Boom. Let me see. So basically, it was last year. I want to give like a kind of a timeline before we shut this down. Can I maybe yearly, or do I gotta do custom? Sometimes clicking on this thing is very strange. See more. Okay. Last 28 days. No, I want lifetime. Lifetime. There it is. Lifetime. Okay. Working these analytics, yo. All right. So, we basically started this channel anew again. It was last year around what? I'm trying to find a date. Does it like give you like, I want the whole thing, man? Sometimes I don't like these charts, man. What's a bar chart look like? That's not what I want. It was around November of last year, basically. And we've grown a lot. This is my point. Is we've grown a lot, man. Now this is like April of 2024. So it might have been around April of 2024. Yeah, we basically started this last year, so in a year's time, we got up to 200, subscribers, which is to me, pretty decent, I think, and I'm happy with the growth. It's just slow, like a lot of my stuff grows slow. I think just because a lot of times I don't hit the mark on the videos, but it's fine. We're learning, we're growing, we're figuring it out. We're going to make better content. We just got to keep pushing ourselves to be better. And I think the Monday podcast and check-in is going to help me find that growth. And it's going to, get me to talk more, because I never really was a person that could talk, for long periods of time, or would want to even talk for long periods of time. So, this is all outside the box for me, and, stepping outside of your comfort zone can be challenging for anybody, so I accept the challenge, because content creation requires you to be able to speak, as fair, pretty clearly, which some folks have better voices than others. And, it's something I have to work on. I think you can work on that and fix it, to make it to where you can sound decent or whatever, and not constantly be saying, because I do that a lot. And I know you guys hear it, because I hear it. And then I'm like, dang, I can't believe I did it again. In my mind, I'm like, God, I did it again, and I want to be able to, eloquently speak, I guess. Is that the right way to say it? Anyway, y'all, like I said, I appreciate people listening to me rant, and, kind of figure out a path forward. If you like the video, you like the stuff, like it, man. Comment. Be a part of our community. The Artistry Society is what we're calling it. And that's art and gaming. Art and gaming. That's what we're doing. Till next time, y'all. You know what to do. I'm out of here, man.